What's up, Wisconsin? Welcome back to the Inside Wisconsin Show here on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts. Trevor Thomas, John Anderson, J.A., Happy New Year, 2025.
Wherever you happen to be listening to this podcast. I happen to be listening to this podcast in Los Angeles at the time as me. I love the Rose Bowl. So what the heck? We came out, do a little stuff with the Tournament of Roses people. And so here I am. The field office continues to move. It's never as easy as just doing it in your basement. Those few times I was fortunate enough to do that.
Yeah. It's easy, yet I think we're both mobile when we need to be mobile. And I should have been keeping track of all the
kind of immobile a lot.
Okay. All right.
Are you in a boot? Are you in the walking boot right now?
No, I'm not in the boot. Okay. I'm good, man.
Okay. No, maybe in honor of today's guest, you put on a walking boot.
Compression sock, maybe, but not a walking boot. I'm going to need a compression sock for a minute. Yeah. Anyway, right. John talked about it. Today's guest, Dr. Mike Ryan. He is the Packers team orthopedic surgeon and my guy. He is the guy that I contacted right after I blew up my Achilles. He's the one that got me to Charlotte to see Dr. Anderson and ultimately was the lead guy on all things Take Care of Trevor, which is a full-time gig. And boy, does he do a lot of other stuff.
Yeah, it could be. It's just slightly less famous than Aaron Rodgers tearing his Achilles. But by the way, you think about it, Aaron's only won 4 more games with the Jets than you did.
That's right.
Almost a push.
I'm really excited about that. I'm sorry. That's great.
You shouldn't be excited about this. By the way, anything that goes this bad, I'll defend Aaron here. It's from the top. That's not just him. How many players did they have? I think the roster was okay. They bring in Devontae. They gas the coach after there's a lot of stuff there that's inherent. Now, he still stinks. That's how he's played recently. He has stunk. He's a Hall of Famer, maybe the best ever. Right now, stinks. But unlike you, I do not wallow in this. And I don't know what your insistence is. A guy that gave 18 years to the franchise, won a Super Bowl, and yet somehow you wallow in this.
I spent the weekend watching the Vikings game at Hamilton's in Washington, D.C. Shout out to them. Excuse me. Do you know how many people at Hamilton's before the Packers game started were wallowing in Aaron Rodgers' lack of success? A lot. So I am not alone.
You're wallowing. You're exulting in his you're exulting in his struggles.
Yep. I am.
Name another Packer that's left the team that you feel that way about. None. You can't. This is the one guy for some reason you decide just is like suddenly.
You know what? We did when Favre left. We did.
You're over that.
Oh, I'll be over I think I'm going to get over the Aaron Rodgers thing.
You're not anywhere close.
Not yet. Nope, not yet. And so help me God, if he ends up with the Bears, all right. It's a new year. Let's move on.
At least Devontae came out. Did you see Devontae, by the way, the other day? He said, no, I'd never go to the Bears.
Oh, did he?
Yeah, he had somebody said, would you ever play? He's like, no, I just can't. No, he said, there's just a lot of things. There's some team. I just could never be a Bear. So he's got that for him. I
appreciate that very much.
There you go.
All right. Dr. Mike Ryan, the Packers team orthopedic surgeon, some inside info, no HIPAA violations to worry about. We want to stay on Goody's good side. And if you've ever watched the Matt LaFleur press conference, when he talks about injuries, he lets nothing out of the bag. And I can promise you that nothing was let out of the bag in this episode. We'll jump in. Mike Ryan on the Inside Wisconsin Show.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Amplify Health, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button, just get with us. J.A., that is the man that I called at 10:30 at night when I blew my Achilles and said, now what? That's Dr. Mike Ryan, the Packers team orthopedic surgeon. Mike, thanks for being here, man.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
What was your response to that call, just by the way, Mike? Like, did you say, yeah, you're too old, go to hell, you got what you deserved, or were you better bedside manner than that?
It's usually, did you make the shot or the pass? Did you complete the play?
Right.
Yeah, and then it's whatever you need. I know a few guys who can help you out, and we took that from there. It's unfortunately that it's just that happens. I mean, you see it every level, but as we get older, it's just it'll get you.
Yeah, got me.
Yeah, I don't know if you heard what he said in there, Trev. As we get older.
Yeah, I heard that.
Just checking. So it's all right.
I'm in that sort of camp as well.
Yeah, he just hit a milestone.
Yeah, I did.
Listen, I'm older than all you guys, and I feel like I'm less injury prone,
okay.
Than the rest of you. Anyway, hey, before do we have to sign any HIPAA paperwork or anything before we start, or can we just jump right into this thing?
I'm good.
Okay.
As long as we're good here on Trevor's side, we're good.
Yeah, we're good. My HIPAA stuff is fine.
Yeah. All right. Usually there's a lot of forms, but that's good. So tell me, like, just in a base level, like I watched the weekend guys, and local sports guys all my life, and I was, that's what I want to do, right from when I was a tyke. How'd you get into your line of work?
It goes way back to high school. I mean, I always loved science, loved sports, and I quickly realized that I was not athletic or big enough to ever make it past, high school and maybe club sports, and loved the idea of being involved in some capacity with both of those. I had a couple of friends in high school who tore their ACLs and saw them go through the process. And then it was really in 2001, Willis McGahee shredded his knee in the national championship against Ohio State. And everyone said, his career's done. And 6 months later, I remember watching him squat and just tear it up. And he had a great career in the NFL. And it hit me as I said, I want to be that guy. I want to be the guy who helps players get back to doing what they love. And that evolved over time. We can't always take care of athletes at the highest level. And those injuries are rare. The number of athletes that participate at that level is low, percentage-wise. And at the end of the day, I learned from many mentors throughout the course of my training that the majority of the people you take care of in your life are the average people, like Trevor, like myself, that are just trying to be active and have a good time and will have an injury, and that need the same level of care to get back to doing what they love, regardless of whether it's the fact that they're getting paid for it or not. And so that really started my ability to get into the idea of sports medicine and taking care of people at all levels and restoring function ultimately. And, there's a long course of how do I get to where I'm at now, but I was fortunate to have a lot of really good mentors and leaders that really guided me along the way and really provided a lot of opportunities for me.
Trev, do you remember the Willis McGahee hit, by the way? Because that was in your lifetime.
Okay, sorry, I don't. I'm sure I would if I watched it, but I don't.
Yeah, New York City, right on the kneecap, and then his knee looks like a road map now, right? It just looks like opening the atlas. It's got so many things. It was awful. It was gruesome.
Yeah.
So how do you go from wanting to be that guy to the Packers team orthopedic surgeon? I mean, that's a long story, I'm sure, but was that a goal of yours that you wanted to land in the NFL? Yeah, we have time.
Yeah, I always knew and never wavered that I wanted to do sports medicine and take care of a team. Whether that was a high school team, I even, was very stuck on the idea of going back home to Colorado Springs and taking care of the high school that I grew up playing. And that was as much fun as I was really looking forward to. And we all have some sort of idea of I think that we're all competitive. We all want to be involved at the highest level of taking care of a professional team, whether that's football or baseball or hockey, basketball. I've always gravitated towards, hockey because I grew up playing that. And then football is really just because of the amount of injuries where you see most of your coverage from a sideline coverage when you're in training. And so for me, it wavered between wanting to take care of, an NFL team. I grew up in Colorado, so the Broncos were, my favorite team growing up. And that idea of being that guy. And then you realize over time how difficult that is. Not only do you have to be really good at what you do, but you have to hit the timing right. You have to be in the right position. You have to have a lot of things that fall your way. And so I also realized that over time, I really actually liked taking care of a lot of the athletes. And many times, because it's a professional world, a lot of the surgeries are agent driven. There's a handful of guys in this country who are excellent surgeons that a lot of the guys go to for the standard stuff, the ACLs. Neil Alatrash is one of those guys. He's fantastic. And we have 32 NFL, team physicians that take care of surgeries, and many of them do a lot of the work too. But, a lot of it's agent driven. And so there was part of my sort of learning that realized that, I want to be the guy actually taking care of that. And you really see that a lot more at the college level. And so my experience in Birmingham, which is where I did my fellowship in sports medicine at Andrews Sports Medicine, really taught me that when you're the team physician for a college, everyone really looks to you because it's a little bit different sort of scenario. These athletes are not being paid, or at least at the time they weren't, they are now. So it's probably going to evolve a little bit. But really, they saw you as the team physician, and you were there. You were there to provide quick access and really kind of coach them through the whole process, working with the athletic training staff, the medical staff of the colleges. And so you really got a lot of hands-on watching these players. And so before I got to this level, my thought was this is kind of where I wanted to be. And then when this opportunity came up and I explored it more and talked to Dr. Pat McKenzie, who's been the team physician for 32 years here, and talked to a variety of other team doctors, whether it was doc for the Orioles or a lot of different levels, I did realize there's a different sort of experience with this, but equally there's a lot of challenges that I wanted to seek out, such as how do you do an evaluation during the draft process? How do you understand players that are coming in and make that a sort of assessment? And when you bring in the business aspect, I thought that was fascinating and trying to be part of that. Well, ultimately, the main goal in preserving that with the idea of being, keep these athletes as safe as they possibly can while letting them do their job at the highest level. And so I would say that, that wavered and kind of changed throughout my course. But ultimately, when this opportunity came up, it was way too hard to pass it up. And it was a challenge that I was really eager to kind of pursue and learn from, quite honestly.
So you can be a part of a team or have a team in medicine if, like, as an athletic trainer, right? Like, I can still tape an ankle into a shin. You could probably be a PT. What I'm getting at is, like, we keep adding more school. And by the time you do what you do, like, there's a commitment there that you really obviously want to do that. At what point did you make that it's okay, I want to be more than an ankle taper or some of these other things, and I want to go the whole literally like 100 yards?
Yeah, I think I would still say it's early on. I think for me, a big part of this experience was the hands-on, the surgery. I love doing surgery. It's so mechanical. It's very biomechanics and physics based. Yet at the same time, you're working with your hands. And yes, your taping ankles does something similar, but there was something unique about surgery, about reconstructing a ligament, or replacing a joint, or clearing out sort of a meniscus injury that you knew was going to be a mechanical change that was going to dramatically change the experience and the symptoms that a patient was feeling. And so the first knee replacement that I watched, I was just in awe. I thought it was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. It is, in many ways, it's barbaric. It's a carpentry of the human body. But for me, it just resonated so deeply that I knew at that moment, I said, this is what I'm meant to do. And I think that, to your point, is it didn't matter. I kind of knew once I learned that this is what I wanted to do and understood the road, it was less daunting because I knew that at the end of that, I was going to get to do the thing that I thought was the coolest thing in the world.
I'm trying. I heard the word barbaric, and I'm like, okay.
I heard carpentry of the human body.
Yeah, that was
now going to be. Now I don't know. That's going to be a bumper sticker or something. But that's a phrase that is now in my life.
I got a little sweaty when he said that. Ugh.
Yeah.
So you said it a minute ago. You're taking over for Pat McKenzie, Dr. Pat McKenzie, who was here for 32 years. So I hope you like it in Wisconsin because you're not going anywhere for a minute.
Yeah.
What has that transition been like for you, knowing that I think you're going to take over full-time? Dr. McKenzie will be out next year. Is that right? But what's that been like?
Yeah, transition timeline. I'm really kind of just leaving it on him. I mean, ultimately, he has been with this team and he's a legend, not only with this team and this community in Green Bay, but really amongst all his peers at the NFL level. You walk around, we joke around because Pat can't walk 10 feet without knowing somebody and having someone come up to him and say, thank you for helping me. And that's the sort of legacy that we all as surgeons and as human beings hope to leave. And it's so apparent that he's done that. And so for me, I think what I've realized is coming into this organization is that Green Bay is a unique organization in such a positive way. Everyone in that organization wants to see everybody succeed. They want to operate at the highest level. The ultimate goal is obviously to win a Super Bowl, but they all want to do it the right way. They want to really take care of the individual, take care of the player, and make sure that, from a focus on the human being standpoint, that they're doing it the right way. And you can tell that experience in the medical training room as well, because Pat has done that since the start of his career, and he continues to do that today. And I've learned so much from him, even in this first year. And that's saying a lot because I've learned from some of the best. I learned from Dr. James Andrews and his proteges, Dr. Jeff Dugas and Lyle Kane down at Andrews. And those guys were phenomenal at what they did. And Pat trained with Dr. Andrews as well. And so a lot of that same philosophy and mentality still persists. And so for me, like looking at what that means in the future, yeah, we love Green Bay. I mean, we're happy to be here. We're thrilled to be part of this community. I'm excited to see, what this looks like in the future as I get to assume more responsibility. And it's going to be a learning process. I mean, I'm going to be very humble going into this, very deferential to the people who've been there for a long time. The medical staff has known this community and this team for far longer than I've been in practice. And so I think it's going to be important for me to really take notes from them, really rely heavily on how they like to operate and how they like to think about things to make sure that this team gets what they need, which is really delivering care at the safest and highest level possible. So I think from Pat's standpoint, I've learned how important that is to this community and making sure that that tradition and that sort of legacy continues here.
I'm trying to think who has more heat on him than you or Ed Policy, because we're replacing two really guys at the top here when they come through.
I would say definitely Ed.
Okay.
There's no doubt about that. I'm not responsible for the financial sort of impacts of a multi-billion-dollar organization. I am a small part of trying to make sure that organization is successful, and my contribution is hopefully making sure that it's not an impedance in any capacity, but only sort of making sure that we keep their players as healthy as possible.
So talk to me about trust, because like guys find, if it's a masseur, they're brand loyal. If they find a guy who tapes their ankle, right, they are brand loyal. How do you start working on that these guys, like, I'm here for you, and I know I'm not Doc, but I am, you're making inroads, so those guys are going to feel good when they sit down at your table?
Great question. Part of that is just really being present. I experienced this when I was at Sanford and took over from the prior position there. I was at Sanford University, small D1 school down in Birmingham. And the first year you're there, you're a new face. No one knows you. And so the expectation to come in and just let them trust you is too much. And so really, you have to step back, understand that it's a relationship building process, that you have to show up, you have to be transparent, you have to be available, you have to answer questions, and you may have to answer questions again and again, and really walk an athlete through, or an athletic trainer through, a thought process or an MRI, and pick up a phone call and be available. And at the end of the day, you can do all those things, and it still takes time. And you ultimately have to be in experiences where you're there to help them, and you have to step up to that experience and really deliver. Whether that's, they dislocate a finger on the sidelines and you can help put it back in, and they realize you were right there and you made that, process seamless. And I wish everything would go seamlessly, but you're always going to come up across experiences where there's going to be a hiccup, and making sure that you are transparent with them and understanding, saying, hey, we're not really sure exactly why this is happening, but we're going to get to the bottom of it. We're going to continue to work with you. And I think by doing those things, being present, being available, really helps you build that. But part of it's time. But I would say that even in my second season, you can start to see that, at least I feel that I've really developed some relationships, not only with all the athletic training staff and the Packers staff, coaches, et cetera, but the players in particular. And as you see them in the locker room and on the sidelines, they start to recognize you. They start to realize that you are there for them, and you're not just a face bouncing in and out. And so I think that presence eventually kind of builds that trust. And it's different, when you're in your office, people walk in and there's a trust established immediately because they're coming to see you. In a professional organization where the resources are abundant and an athlete can call their agent on a whim and be anywhere in the country the next day, it is important to make sure that you establish that relationship and really develop that trust over time, and not expect that it's going to happen overnight. And I think that that's something that, Pat has showed me how to do really well. And I continue to, work on that and develop those relationships kind of currently.
So you're developing trust, but you got the gig. Like, you're the guy, you're taking over. So, there's a developing trust thing, but you're also there, and you're going to do it either way. Mm-hmm. What was that interview process like? And was it like a committee? Did you get hired by a committee? Were there players? Were there coaches? Was Goody and Policy? What's that like?
Yeah. So connection really came down to a Wisconsin connection. As I mentioned before, Pat McKenzie trained down at Andrews Sports Medicine. And so there was a philosophical sort of connection. But I didn't know him directly from that. Andrews has trained, 500 residents or fellows over the years. And really the connection was Mike Gallagher, former congressman here. He and my wife went to high school and college together. And so I've known Mike Gallagher since 2012. And when Mike got married up here, probably 4 years ago or so, we came out for the wedding, and one of the sort of pre-wedding events was a Packers game. And he casually mentioned, hey, you should, be the team doctor. I know the team doc. We'll connect you, and, we'll see what happens. And in my mind, I said, that's not really how it works, Mike. Little did I know that Mike Gallagher actually has a lot more sort of connections and pull than I would have ever realized until I came up here when we moved. But he was the connection, and he ran into Pat and put my resume in front of Pat and said, hey, you should really reach out to Mike Ryan. And sure enough, Pat did. And in May of 2022, Mike said, Pat's going to call you. You should pick up his call. And I did. And Pat and I had a fantastic first conversation, which led to an interview. And when I came up here, I sat down with Pat and Flea, the head athletic trainer, and had a conversation about how they like to operate, what the expectations were, what the sort of experience looks like as a team physician. And then from there, I did have an interview. I interviewed with Goody. I interviewed with Mark. I interviewed with Russ Ball. And those three experiences, allowed me to ask the questions, but also allowed them to get to know me and really get a sense of who I was and how I like to focus on taking care of athletes. And ultimately, at the end of the day, what was really apparent to me in that whole process was every single individual at this organization that I talked to that day, their primary focus was athlete safety. Yes, they want to win a Super Bowl. They want to be successful. They want to win. But at no point was there any concern that there was going to be any sort of conflict as, is this player going to play or not? This was, if you feel that he's not safe to play, that is your call, and we will always defer to you. And that was an important part for me to make sure that that was going to be the case coming in. And there was not one concern with that. And you could tell that they all really cared primarily about athlete safety as the number one priority when it came to the medical side of things.
Russ Ball was in charge of the weight room as the head strength and conditioning coach when I was an athlete at Missouri. Really? And the guy we had was Doc McElroy, was our team guy. He's the guy that got me out of the hospital. I was hurt. Doc McElroy was trustworthy because he had gray hair. And I think that's right. Part of the reason that we do that, like, you look way too young to be in this job. Have you run into that where they're like, okay, you don't have gray hair. You don't look like, you need to look like Marcus Welby, and you don't.
Yeah. I started to grow a little bit right here.
That? Yeah, but I'm not sure that's enough.
I mean,
like this.
I would not say it, not as much. Yeah, right. Not as much in the training room. It was funny, and the easy anecdote to really relay that is Packer social media recently asked how old do you consider old, or what year of birth year do you consider old, and unanimously they all walked through, and some were saying year 2000. Anything beyond that's old. And I'm sitting there going, as born in the 80s, which again, I don't feel that old, but recently turning 40, it kind of hits you. But when they started saying anything, later than the 90s is old, I said, oh man, we're in trouble. But no, so I think because of the age of the athlete, it's a little bit different. I definitely get it in clinic. I have, patients come in and say, are you even old enough to be a doctor? And so that isn't a common occurrence. But I would say because of the age of the athlete, and we have the youngest team in the NFL, the gap is enough that, that hasn't really, really had been a thing that's kind of been one of those where it's like, are you sure? I think the trust of understanding, me being 40 is enough distance between where the athletes are and making that a concern.
So you may look young, but being young allows you to actually know more about maybe up and coming technology or some of the new procedures. And I'm not saying Doc McKenzie does it the old school way, but there's got to be some benefit to that too. Is there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think quite honestly, for example, the way we do an ACL is very similar, and that goes back to our training with Dr. Andrews. When things work well, yes, absolutely be open to new techniques that can help improve where you're at. And there's a lot of controversy around ACL and ACL grafts, but at the end of the day, when you look at the 32 NFL surgeons, they all kind of use the same graft, which goes back to what we've been doing for decades. So I would say that, the youth, I think, maybe helps in terms of, did I train exclusively with arthroscopic surgeries for, let's say, rotator cuff repair? Yes. Have I done any open rotator cuff repairs like they did when arthroscopic, surgery came about? No, I've not done that because the techniques have evolved. So there's a little bit difference there. And so I think that maybe the skill set and training for someone who's kind of in my age range, we get a lot more hands-on with some of the newer techniques. But at the end of the day, docs like Doc McKenzie, they've been doing the same thing for just as long. It's just a little bit different sort of learning experience getting introduced to that. But I would say that, technology for us too, yeah. I mean, implants change in terms of how we fix certain things or how we fix a tendon. And those can evolve, but, surgeons are so adept at learning new techniques and new sort of technologies that I wouldn't say that alone, just because you're younger, is an added benefit. Quite honestly, a lot of the techniques have been, and the new implants have been developed by surgeons who are Dr. McKenzie's age or kind of within that sort of a decade of his age anyway, because they were the pioneers that saw the need for something new. And so I think youth helps in certain capacities, but at the end of the day, a surgeon at this level, they're always going to stay on top of the most current literature. They're always going to stay on top of a lot of the new techniques and new things that come along. For example, that what I would say is like, more hyper specialization where you have someone who just does pec repairs, yeah, we'll send someone to that individual because they do, 100 of them a year as opposed to 2 a year. So that's where I would say that the probably biggest differences that you see kind of as things have evolved over the last, 10 to 30 years.
Just real quick follow-up on that on technology then, because they tell you like your computer every 2 years becomes outdated. Like how quick is that going? Because I know like Mike Ditka, when he had his first hip replacement, they used, instead of like titanium, it was like a coconut and a stick. Like how quickly are things evolving?
Yeah. I think if you look back to the 80s and 90s and even early 2000s, pretty quickly. But I think we've kind of like a lot of things, technology, at least in the medical space, does not really advance to the same level. Like, for example, Moore's law with, computer chips where, every 2 years you'd see a doubling of capacity. We really don't see that in the medical world. And I think one of the big reasons is one, you're dealing with the physics and sort of physiology and biomechanics of the human body, right? So we realize quickly that, for example, like you said, like a hip replacement, there's certain sort of characteristics of the metals that we use and the alloys that are used that really are as close or, closely reflect the actual sort of, mechanics of bone biology. And so, yes, can you try to experiment with new things? Yeah, but a lot of these are so tried and true and they have decades of research behind them that aside from trying to make them last longer and, stay in the body longer without becoming loose, there's not a lot of sort of newer changes with that in terms of the implant technology because we've really, caught up pretty quickly. I would say that there are certain things that, in terms of like what we call anchors, meaning when we repair a tendon to bone or, a labrum, we put these small anchors in the bone. Those have gotten smaller, more efficient, and then we've gotten to ones where you don't even need to tie knots. So the amount of tissue still in and around that repair is less. So I would say that those things have probably evolved even in my training. It comes down to things that make what you do more efficient and less invasive or less sort of disruptive to the tissues.
I'm going to spend the majority of watching this back in an encyclopedia and a dictionary to understand what words you're using and what they mean. So we'll just say we're going to a break. We'll be back with the Human Carpenter. That one I understand. The Packers orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Mike Ryan. Just a minute. The Inside Wisconsin Show.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Amplify Health, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube. Leave a review. Smash the like button. Just get with us. All right, J.A., so for the Vikings game in Washington, D.C. at Hamilton. Hamilton's is the official Packers bar in Washington, D.C. If you ever go there, check it out.
So that's not a musical. This is not the musical.
No, this is not the Hamilton. No, it was Hamilton.
Well, maybe they interrupted the musical for the Vikings game. Hang on. Yeah. Okay.
Hamilton's.
Yeah.
All right, so this is great. There's no place like home, right? And if I could click my heels and end up back in Wisconsin at any time, I would.
You'd probably fall over, but okay.
My heel's doing fine. We walked in Hamilton's. And there's Miller Lite on tap right away. And I'm like, boom, because there just wasn't many options for Miller Lite in our time in Washington, D.C. So I sit down, and everywhere in D.C. you Uber, or walk. Sure. You're Ubering or walking. We had a rental vehicle. I was not driving and trying to figure out parking. So we Ubered there. We were going to Uber home. First thing I do is order Miller Lite and some cheese curds, right? And they had brats on special. It was a really fun time. And they did a bunch of giveaways at halftime. Anyway, according to my tab, I had 8 Miller Lites in 4 hours. I was not over-consumed.
6 of those in the first half, and then 2 in the back and the comeback, and you had to concentrate.
I wasn't overserved. I was there for 4 hours. I had 2 beers an hour, right? After the 8th one, he walks up to me, the owner of this place, and he goes, "Hey, you driving?" And I was like, "No. Who does that?"
Why, you need a ride?
Oh. Right? He goes, "Oh, you want a shot?" So after 8 Miller Lites, this guy's like, "Hey, you want a shot?" I was like,
"Need a proper capper on the night."
Yeah. But anyway, if you get the chance, I know. Didn't you go to a Packers Everywhere celebration in London? I mean, those are pretty epic.
Yeah. It was. Yeah, I did. It was like there were Packers everywhere.
Right. We travel well. I chose to go to Hamilton's and enjoy Miller Lite instead of going to the Commanders game that was in town that night and enjoying Miller Lite there. That was a little bit more of a trek than we wanted to. But all that to say, if you have the chance when you're out and about, find your Packers bar, order a Miller Lite. They'll probably have it on tap
Could you be an official Packers bar if you're not serving Miller Lite?
I don't think so.
I don't think you can have you can't have the old gray Irish setter left-handed stout or whatever, people always want to. Yeah, if it's a Packers bar, you have access to Miller Lite, or it's not really a Packers bar.
I agree. That's a good call.
That would be my guess. Yeah.
Take a guess how much a Miller Lite on tap in a 16-ounce glass was in Washington, D.C.
So these were 16 ouncers.
Yeah, 16 ounce. Yep. A pint glass. What? Oh, okay. It was more than 8 beers. I was still fine.
It's all good. Listen, as long as you're not carrying them, you're fine. Okay, so let's see. Yeah, real quick. There's 8 of them, but the shot was free, right?
Yep, shot was free.
Yeah, sure. You buy 8. And they give you the shooter for nothing. Good for them. I'm gonna say just on the beer alone, $72.
They were $5.50 a pint.
That's not terrible.
No, he said it was the only place you can get a Miller Lite on tap for under $10 in DC. And I was like, well, thank you on behalf of all Wisconsin and Packer fans everywhere.
Might drive out here next week.
I think you should. Making memories, that's what we were doing. It was the end of the year. It tasted like Miller time in Washington, D.C. Go to MillerLite.com/InsideWisconsin to find delivery options near you, or you can pick up some Miller Lite pretty much anywhere they sell beer. It tastes like Miller time. Celebrate responsibly. Celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces. Fewer calories and carbs than premium regular beer. So I guess it was more than 8. But I'm able to hold my own.
I think the moral of the story comes through, regardless of the full number of ounces.
That's what I was hoping. Time for another top 5 list on the Inside Wisconsin show, presented by our friends at the University of Wisconsin-Platteville. Their renowned engineering and STEM programs offer a cutting-edge environment with over 60 majors to choose from. Plus, with exciting clubs and organizations, there's always fun happening on campus. Discover why UW-Platteville is a smart investment. Apply now. uwplatt.edu. Lovely campus. Have you been to Platteville?
I actually drove through it the other day, real close, on my way to Madison for the NCAA cross country championships. But I have not spent appreciable time on the campus.
That side of the state, what do they call that? The driftless region, where it's not super flat and hills, and it's gorgeous.
Yeah, I tell people that all the time. I know it's all farmland, the majority of Wisconsin, but actually, if you get over to the western edge and the Mississippi bank, it's unbelievable. The bluffs and the whole thing. And then people go, wait, no, the Mississippi River doesn't run up there. It's from Mississippi. And then you got to explain to them how it started Minnesota. It's like, get a map, people. Anyway,
All right. In honor of Dr. Mike Ryan today, you came up with a top 5 list of your own injuries. Let's talk about your injuries first.
I have. And all of these were achieved in sort of in noble pursuits. And instead of going 5 to 1, I'm going to go the most serious 1 to 5, and you'll figure out in the end.
Okay.
So the most you've heard me talk about the worst one I had was when I blew up my ankle in college. Right, I had rolled it a couple of times. I had sprained it. I had cracked a bone in it. It's amazing. I forgot. And then I go to a Big 8 track meet in Nebraska, and you had 3 minutes to jump. And so I'm sitting there, and they'd started before the opening ceremonies where the captains come. I was a sophomore. So the captains come around and you do this, and they play the national anthem. And so just as I get going and I get my name called, it's my turn in the rotation, and they're going to start the national anthem. And the guy goes, hey, if you want, you can sit this out for the clock, or you can go now. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go now. So I kind of I plant my foot. And if you've seen it, a high jump shoe has spikes in the front, but also in the back, the heel spikes. And the heel spikes catch. And so I go up, and my foot stays there, and it goes, and there's the problem. And so now I have to go, and I sit there, and I'm kind of writhing in pain, and they kind of haul me off. And now my mom comes back to see me because they happen to be there. It was the only time one of 2 times they ever came and saw me jump, and they happened to be in Nebraska. And the first thing my mom says, not how are you, she goes, you realized you screamed right in the middle of the national anthem. Yeah. So here I am, and I'm like, okay, by the way, they're not sure if they're going to be able to take me home tonight. I might have to stay while they stabilize this thing because they don't. We just went over in a van, like they're not sure they can get me home tonight, but that's cool. I'll make sure I'm nicer next time. That I won't yell during the national anthem. Unbelievable. And then like yours, that got infected and it was awful. It was terrible. I stayed in, it was bad. And then it got reinfected during the summer when I was back being a park. It was terrible. Number 2 on the list as we count down is my left shoulder. I have a wonderful nephew, Josh, who is 47 now. Yeah. So Josh was born when I was 12. So he's always been more like my little brother than than I was an uncle. And I swear I threw more pitches to that kid than I ever did to Colin, just because of when you're 12, you can play all the time. So he comes out to visit me in Phoenix. We're going to go to a Diamondbacks game and the whole thing. And Josh was a great ball player. Played on his town team in Minneapolis forever. One time he couldn't hit. He was having trouble hitting some inside curveball or something. And I said, hang on. I was at work at ESPN. I got a guy who can help you. And so I put him on the phone and he's like, Josh, yeah, this is Tony Gwynn. So Tony Gwynn gave him a hitting lesson over the phone, which was amazing because Tony's sitting there with the phone on his shoulder. He's trying to, act like this. It was great. Anyway, so he comes and we're playing catch. And as you are wont to do, you kind of heat it up and you kind of heat it up and you kind of heat it up. Well, Josh could throw about 85, 88, and I thought I could. And so I just threw it, and all of a sudden the next day my arm is hanging. And so it was terrible, but it kind of came back. And then I tried to throw again, and it hurt. So but I'm not pitching. I'm not playing softball, any of these things. But finally, carrying the kids around, it got so I'm like, you needed to have it fixed. So I went in, and it wasn't the rotator cuff. It was they had shaved the scapula or something down there to make it feel better. And now I have to rehab. Soft toss, little thing where finally they go, you can throw a hard ball. And so I'm like, okay, I don't have kids in the neighborhood. So Tamra says she'll come out with me and do it. Just not very far, right? 50 feet. So I take the hard ball and I throw it, and it's coming here, and she jumps out of the way. Then it goes flying down the street. And I'm like, what? She goes, I didn't know you were going to throw it right at me. So that's how long that catch landed. And I never think I properly got it right because it still hurts to this day trying to actually throw, but I haven't thrown a curveball.
Is this now, real quick, is that pre or post first pitch of the Brewers?
That all happened before. So I threw the first pitch of the Brewers with my arm. You notice I didn't hump it because I get it to here. When you really have to pull down, I couldn't. So I had to I'm a junk baller and nothing but salad up there anymore when it comes. So number 3, quick, is when I had Dupuytren's. That's the thing where it's the Vikings disease where it comes through, right? So I would shake hands, and I had this. It was very bad, and they had it fixed. And that's where the guy said, "Oh, let me show you what I did." And he sent me a video, and I'm like, I don't want to see it. But I'll tell you this: in rehab, all of a sudden, I played the best golf of my life the first 4 weeks out of that because it hurt a little, and I gripped the club so soft and lightly, it was like butter. And then once it got better, I just start gripping the hell out of the thing again.
I got a video of that. As a matter of fact, that's funny because you sent me a video of you playing golf not long after surgery, and I was like,
28 days, like butter. 28 days like butter. So number 4 is when I broke my kneecap.
How?
Which was really hurt. Yeah. So like any kid, I always say, my mom always said, I went through my life 60% of childhood with a skin knee. And the other 40%, I had 2 skin knees because we were so active and played all the time. I was skiing with my buddy Rick Crossland, and at the time, this gal I was dating, who shall remain nameless because there's no reason to put her in, but her family and I had gone up to ski. It was great. And now I'm just skiing through places you shouldn't be skiing, right? I'm off the beaten path and I'm skating through the woods, and it's going to be great because I just am swishing and clicking, and it's great. And this place I had come through, and then there was this beautiful cliff that you could ski off, and it was great. And the powder was awesome. I used to be able to ski pretty well. And so now I'm going through this a second time because this is awesome. Like Winger, you got to see this. And all of a sudden I come upon a fella who is hanging onto a tree. because he has gone through there and thinking this is great. And then he sees this 10-foot drop and decides that's not great. And so I'm like, okay, we'll send somebody up for you. I'm going to ski by you. Just don't move. Hang on. You're going to be fine. And as I start down, the guy lets go of the tree. It gets in my way. So now off I go, tumbling down, and I hit my knee on a rock or a tree stump through the snow, and I take a big hunk out of it and crack it. Now I got to sit in the or lay down in the sled and take me all the way down, and I got to go to the emergency room, and it was terrible. And then Doc Ock went in and fixed it and took a little piece out. And as much as Doc Ock liked to cut people, Doc Ock was amazing because he also supplied all our smelt nets when we went fishing. But that was embarrassing because I'm in front of my girlfriend, and I thought I could ski pretty well, and I ended up having to have the ski patrol take me down with a busted up knee. Sucked. And the last one, and this is the least of the 5, but it's the most important to me because I'm just riding my bike, and at Kennedy School, I'm coming back. Now, I was coming back from my friend's Stroh, and the easiest way was to cut through our old elementary school, and now I'm going down, and there's a little 2-lane bridge. It goes over the creek because, Kennedy Creek is what it was, because we had creeks back then too. Sorry, I've been in the Northeast too long to have a creek. And I forget, I was not paying attention doing something, and all of a sudden I nearly hit the bridge, and so I got to swerve, and I kind of bounce through, and I just fall over the bike innocently enough, and then my hand swells up. I'm like, good God. And I look at it, and I'm like, I think that might be bad. And they always say, can you do this? And I'm like, couldn't do this. So I go in, and turns out I break my hand, broke my thumb. And so now I have a cast on my thumb, and I go to Packers practice, and I wish I still had the cast because, John Anderson signs it, number 59, from the other John Anderson, thereby establishing that I was the first John Anderson in town, and he was the second. I don't know, lesser, but he was the second. I wish I still had it, but yeah. But the cast was just, and it was the only signature. I didn't have, like usually your buddies all sign the cast. That was a big thing. Just one. The other actually was the left one. The other John Anderson.
That's awesome.
So, yeah. So I've been hurt a bunch, man. Like I shouldn't. I've been hurt what a normal active young man should be doing, right? You should fall off a bike once in a while. You should have a skiing accident. You should try to throw your baseball 88 miles an hour, which is kind of the equivalent, I think, of trying to beat out a double play in softball. Yeah. Because I shouldn't have been running that fast. But, it's just like if you're a young man and you go through childhood and you don't come away with something broken or some scars, I just don't know that you're trying hard enough.
Well,
we're
trying in this house. Don't get me wrong. We are.
Well, yeah, your kids right now, they're just, like you love them, but they're also, your kids are, I'd say, walking deductibles, but they're kind of limping deductibles.
It's a new year. I would like to maybe not meet my deductible this year. That'd be great.
It's the new year. We got to start over from zero. Oh,
right.
That's okay. Usually your kids have this knocked out by April.
Yeah, true.
You'll be fine.
Thanks. We're back, the Inside Wisconsin show. Trevor, John, and the Packers team orthopedic surgeon, Dr. Mike Ryan. So the Packers gig is a great gig and a lot of hours, I'm certain, but it's not your full-time gig. You still have to practice on the regular. You work for one of the health organizations here in town named Prevea Health. There's more. There's Aurora. There's Bellin or Amplify now. So what is a day like for you when you have to do your real job, but then also be the Packers team doc as well?
Yeah, it's a balance, right? I would say the majority of the time that I commit throughout the day is still focused on what I would call my real job or my primary job, which is taking care of the community. And so that involves, office hours. So today I was seeing patients throughout the majority of the day. And then I have days when I do surgery. So a typical day, if I'm in the office, especially on a Monday after a Sunday game, number one priority is we got to stop by the Packers facility, kind of triage and see what's going on and see if we need to, address any injuries that happened the night before. And that can take anywhere from, an hour to 2 or 3 hours, depending upon how busy we are. And then after that, my office is typically scheduled so that I can start my day kind of, before lunch. And then I will really run that day through the, afternoon hours, 4 o'clock, 5 o'clock. So I'm seeing patients. And seeing new patients with new injuries, or following up on patients who we've sent for treatment, or following up on patients who've had surgeries. And then my other days, on surgery days, which are Tuesday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'm usually there in the morning. Surgery start at 7, so it's usually an early start. And then depending upon when I finish with that, I will oftentimes check in at the facility to make sure that everything's okay, see if they need anything. And then, once the weekend rolls around, we kind of our game schedule. So we'll check in on Saturday before the game, make sure everyone's okay to go. And then Sunday morning, shows up, and we're usually at the facility about 3 hours beforehand. So, it's a more or less a 7-day, week job. Now, are we there all day long? No, not really, but it's making sure that, we are available to stop by, to answer questions, to see people, and, to lend a hand if needed.
What's a game day like?
Game day. So, our next game is coming up against the Bears. It's a noon game, which we all love because it makes sure, everyone's home at a decent hour, get to see their families. But noon game pretty much means we're there about 9 a.m. We'll show up, check on some players that are getting some early treatment. And, rarely, are we making any decisions. Those decisions are typically made early in the week, making sure that guys are ready to go and feeling good. So it's rare that we're making a decision on the game day. Those are really kind of few and far between sort of circumstances. We're really there early just to make sure that, anyone has any questions, making sure that as guys warm up, if, God forbid something happens, we're there to answer a question. We have some meetings leading up to it to go over with, the head team official and the other medical team's staff, really going over what we call kind of emergency action plan, which really outlines, in the event of an injury, depending upon the type of injury, how we're going to approach that, where all the equipment is, what hospitals we would go to if needed, and who is doing what role. And so, fortunately, at the professional level, the amount of resources is huge, right? So you have an orthopedic surgeon, you have a primary medical physician, you have a neurosurgeon, you have a lot of consultants on the outside, you have airway specialists, you have ER specialists running codes if need be. And then you have a whole host of individual unaffiliated neurological consultants who are really helping monitor any sort of potential head injuries or concussions, and they're helping kind of facilitate, adherence to protocols that have been established by the NFL. And so there's a whole experience in understanding, who's doing what, and that's kind of our hour meeting before the game starts. And then afterwards, we're out there, get to watch warm-ups, and again, making sure that guys are, feeling okay and moving through, and that there's no injuries. And then come in right before the game, listen to some, final words, and then head out and, that we're on the field and making sure that we can keep these players healthy and safe.
So I feel like at some point there is an inherent, we've seen enough, a line that you have to, I don't know if walk's the right word, but like guys always want to play. Coaches would like to have their players available. And sometimes like you have to be the bad guy, imagine on both, and sometimes like the guy's healthy enough to play. And he's like, Coach, how do you handle those? Because those are some, I don't want to say maybe ethical dilemmas. To some point it could be. But how do you handle when those things start to kind of butt heads? Yeah.
It's a fine line to walk. But, one of my mentors, and when I was at Alabama, the head athletic trainer there, Jeff Allen, his sort of comment was, we as medical professionals, our number one priority is athlete safety. If they have an injury and we determine they are unsafe, it doesn't matter if they can perform or they think they can perform or a coach thinks they can perform. If they're unsafe to play, it is our duty and responsibility to ensure that they don't go back on that field. And obviously there are different priorities. A sprained ankle, are they okay to play? Well, if everything looks okay and we determine it's safe, if they're kind of limping around, probably not the best. If they can't function, then they shouldn't be out on the field playing. A different situation is, head, neck, and heart. If there's a question there, there's really not a lot of threshold to make any sort of, argument. If there's concern, we're very conservative and we remove that player from the field of play. And that happens routinely. And, I think the good news or the good thing about this organization is, yeah, you may get some pushback about, hey, why don't we have our guys out playing? But the moment you explain why, the realization from the coaching staff and the administrative staff and everybody else in that organization understands, and that's pretty much the end of it. Now, there may be discussions afterwards of how do we approach this going forward? How do we make sure that we can avoid these potential injuries? But at the end of the day, this organization has been from the start great about listening to the medical staff when we said, hey, this is not safe to go, and the player's now removed. And in general, yeah, players want to play, no doubt. And we love that. But players do understand when you actually sit down, let them calm down after an injury, because it's a really emotionally upsetting experience watching an athlete go through an injury, and then you telling them that they're no longer playing in that game, that further exacerbates that experience. Yet once you give them a minute to calm down, take a breath, and you can look them in the eyes and talk and say, listen, we got you. I know you want to go out there and play, and we'd love to get you out there more than anything. But at the end of the day, I'm here to care more about than just the next play. I'm here to care about what your future is like next week or in 10 years. Because at the end of the day, there's no game, doesn't matter if you're a professional athlete, that's worth compromising your health long term. And usually when you get to sit down with them on that, they may still not agree with you, but they come to an understanding of why you're telling them they can't play. And in general, my experience of watching others do that and then doing that in my own experience, that generally goes over relatively well, to the point where they can start to understand, okay, I get it. I don't like it, but I get it. And that's where I think, to what our earlier point, that really helps kind of build trust, where you say, I'm watching out for you, not just today, but for the future. And I think athletes really do appreciate that.
So you keep talking about the field of play. When I watch a game, because I know you personally, I watched for you a couple games ago. I texted him and I was like, are we still working with the Packers? Because you didn't run out there once this game. You and Doc McKenzie were going back and forth. What's that like, play by play for you, Dr. Ryan? When a player goes down, there seems like there's a herd of you guys and gals that run out there. Take us through what that's like from the moment a player goes down, and what do you have to do to assess them? What do you ask them? I don't know. Just take us behind the cheddar curtain on that.
Yeah. So, I mean, the good news is part of the experience in seeing this, you get to learn how to watch the game slightly differently. A lot of what you're watching is, initially at the field of on the field of play, looking at the sort of initial sort of contact line. So, as the ball snapped, I'm not really looking at like how the play is developing necessarily. I'm really looking at the offensive line to see, hey, did anyone go down? Did someone's knee get caught up? Did someone's ankle get stepped on? And then once the ball's either handed off or the quarterback drops back to pass, you're kind of watching guys as they kind of spread out in the formation and move down the field to make sure no guys are falling or twisting your ankle. And then as the quarterback either hands it off or releases, is he getting hit? Is there a situation where he gets hit and, rolls back and hits his head or tweaks his knee? And so you're kind of watching, as the play develops, but either kind of ahead or behind the play. You're not actually watching the point of contact of the ball necessarily. And so I think with that, that's kind of where your eyes are. And, as everyone's watching the pass downfield, we're actually kind of looking back behind the play to make sure that, everything is kind of settled appropriately. If an athlete does go down, the initial sort of focus is, all right, is he getting back up, number one? And if not, we're trying to get out there to, have a quick assessment. Is this, a lower extremity injury, upper extremity injury, or is this more of a head injury? And so, the first things you're ruling out are any major sort of head or neck injuries. And if you get out there and their athletes talking to you, they can articulate exactly where they're, having issues and pain. Then you kind of move on to, okay, what happened, trying to get a little quick history from them, trying to understand where it hurts, trying to understand if they felt anything like a pop or anything like that. And you're really kind of doing your sort of diagnostic sort of assessment that we normally do in the clinic, but you're doing it in a little bit more sort of efficient manner to see if this is something that we need to, really sort of elevate on the field of play, or, as it calms down, can we get them up on their feet? Are they safe to walk off the field and then do an eval in the blue tent later on? And so those are the first sort of things that we're looking at when an athlete does go down.
I really want to know what happens in the blue tent. I think I told Trevor I wanted to do a story one time, and ESPN said you can't make it. I wanted to like open the blue tent and have like a giant party and a waltz and people doing all like elephants running free. What's happening in there? Okay, so you are talking about two different clienteles: athlete, pro athlete, and the people you see every day who might jog or play tennis or anything. But these are two different things. I've never met any guy, well, maybe Doc Ock, who I knew and did my knee. Guys, surgery is generally a last resort kind of thing, right? So if I I have a high ankle sprain, you're like, John, you're going to guess what? You're going to, what is it, rice? I'm going to elevate. No. But now you got a guy over here who has a high ankle sprain, and the Super Bowl's 2 weeks away. And I kind of joked earlier about, like, I think it was Tua Tagovailoa that in college they did the tightrope surgery on him, his ankle. When do you make, like, do you ever struggle with that? Like, okay, I wouldn't do this to a normal person, but here in this case, I guess surgery is an option. How do you handle those kind of operations?
Yeah. So, the two situations a little bit interesting. But ultimately, when you ask the idea of, surgery versus non-surgery, to your point, ultimately, even with a professional athlete, we're not doing surgery to get them back playing sooner. I don't know that there's really anyone in the NFL trying to do that. Surgery is a last resort, even at this level. And I think that when you look at, even a high ankle sprain, for example, we've had plenty of those in these last 2 years in my experience being here. None of them that are true high ankle sprains have required surgery. And that is also an area that I would say that in talking to Bob Anderson, who is phenomenal, I've learned a ton from him, and he's been a consultant for the Packers and is one of the world's foremost, foot and ankle surgeons. And, Trevor knows him really, really well. But he would tell you that, we're still learning the exact indications on which ones truly need a tightrope. And a lot of that really comes down to, it's more than just a high ankle sprain. It's a high ankle sprain that is unstable by definition based on the other associated ligamentous injuries. And so again, not as a foot and ankle surgeon myself, but in learning that from him, we realized that, even in those scenarios, it could take a little while for the athlete to get back, but at the end of the day, putting a tightrope in and pushing them forward, is that the best sort of thing for their career at this point in the NFL? And some could argue, yes, depending upon the type of injury, but in general, the majority of the high ankle sprains that we see do not need that surgery. And I would argue that a lot of the other injuries that we're seeing, have a pretty clear line, and most times that, this is surgical or not. And, you may, have a kind of a borderline, injury that's like, is this could be surgery. And that's where second opinions really help. And I think that when you have 32 physicians at the NFL level who have seen, these types of injuries over the years, you get a second opinion and a third opinion and a fourth opinion. And by that time, you've really had a good sort of, assessment from multiple minds who have done this for a long time, who've seen it all and have, great expertise to be able to make the right recommendation. And none of that is to get this athlete back on the field quicker than, you would otherwise do.
All right. So you mentioned Dr. Anderson, Bob Anderson. That's who did my surgery. That's who Dr. Ryan said, you're going to Charlotte. That's who did it from John. I didn't beat out the double play in softball. Okay. I understand. But that guy saved my beer league softball career by getting me to Dr. Anderson and then helping me with the follow-up. Anyway, what is up with all these Achilles pop, right? I'm not surprised it happened to me, but I am surprised to see how much, I guess, we've seen it in professional sports. Has it always been there, or is it maybe just more aware to people in Green Bay because Rodgers did it?
I'm sure it's a little bit of both. I mean, at the end of the day, all professional sports take a really close look at what the injury trends are. And regardless of the sport, NFL, NBA, MLB, you're all going to see fluctuations. And you're going to have averages. And, the goal ultimately of any league and any sort of league medical sort of safety office is to decrease those injuries. But it's professional sports. You're really, players are taking themselves to the edge, whether that's running as fast as they can, cutting as hard as they can, jumping as high as they can, and injuries are going to happen. And you're going to have more years where it seems like it's, a higher rate, and there are comparatively, but really on the average, what you see is that the trends don't change too dramatically, quite honestly. If you look at the ACL and ACL rates in the, NFL, they've kind of trended down the last, year or two, I think, but sometimes you'll have a peak. And so I don't necessarily think that they're happening more. I think that, social media helps identify every time they happen, and it becomes very much in the public eye. And then you have an athlete like Aaron Rodgers, like you said, who, is well known to the Green Bay area for over a decade. And it just becomes one of those things that now people see that, and it's very prominent in the sort of, popular culture and the popular eye. But I don't think that there's necessarily, we're seeing much more Achilles, injuries for any specific reason. I think a lot of times it's really just the trend in the year, and you get, fluctuations.
So you talked about Achilles, you mentioned ACLs. I'm taken back to, and we had this kind of conversation in earlier about technology. But if you remember in the Bills game a few years ago, this is not DeMar Hamlin, totally different thing, but there was a guy named Kevin Everett. Went down, kickoff, made a block, head, and he goes down. It's backboard paralyzed kind of thing. But whoever was their physician at the time, whoever this guy that comes out is, he's testing, but he feels him, and he grabs at his groin as hard as he can, and he feels just a tinge of movement, and he says, okay, I think we can get this guy. And I don't know if you saw it, they brought his body temperature, they did all kinds of crazy things. My point is, for all of this technology, how much of what you do, especially when you go out there initially, is just in your hands, that you feel, that you wiggle, that you can just tell right here?
The vast majority of it. And that really is really what goes back to the years of training and why becoming an orthopedic surgeon and sports medicine surgeon takes so many reps. That's what I learned in fellowship and at Andrews Sports Medicine was it's all about reps. The more hands-on you get, the more different sort of circumstances you get to see, the more you learn, and the more that kind of, banks in your memory to where you can, recollect that the next time something like that happens or something similar happens. And so much of it is just repetition and pattern recognition of, okay, I saw this, it's going to be one of these things. I need to make sure that, I'm ruling this out. And if it doesn't fit the picture, we need to kind of go down a different path or look to something else to help us kind of make this diagnosis. But at least early on in the triage process, so much of it comes down to understanding the injury mechanism, understanding what the player is telling you, understanding your examination, relying on your understanding of anatomy to really hone in and make that decision. And I think that the vast majority of the orthopedic surgeons, and as well as especially at this level, are very, very good at that and develop this years of sort of experience that they can rely on that sort of skill set. And then ultimately, the benefit again of having all the resources that I can walk on the sidelines and pull up numerous different camera angles to really evaluate the injury mechanism. I can see it from different perspectives and help me understand exactly what happened. So that I can really have a better understanding of if I have a question that I can need to go back and repeat the examination because it didn't make sense the first time, or I can look at X, Y, and Z, or hey, his foot looked like it was caught as well as his knee. I can look at that as well. And then that helps you kind of figure out your triage and say, okay, well, we need, these imaging studies to follow, the next, coming day or two. And so I think that in general, yes, technology helps, but your first sort of assessment is based on, the skill set that you pick up throughout your training.
So you've mentioned it a couple times, Birmingham and the Andrews Clinic. And Trev, I don't know if you're a orthopedic nerd or not, but like if somebody gets hurt, listen, I use this example, like if somebody's agent speaks for them, unless it's Drew Rosenhaus or Scott Boras, you don't say the name. Like if there's a Mount Rushmore of the orthopedic guys, James Andrews is on it, Frank Job's on it. I don't know who the other two guys are. Explain if he's not Vince Lombardi of orthopedic guys, or explain to people who might not know about Dr. James Andrews, because he is right, like he is a giant in the industry.
He is, yeah, and you're spot on. There's a handful of orthopedic surgeons across the country who really help shape what sports medicine is in orthopedics today, and Andrews is absolutely at the top of that. As you mentioned, Frank Job and Russ Warren from New York, and a handful of other gentlemen that they actually learned from, really helped shape what we do. And sports medicine back in the 80s was really, very early in our understanding of, what it is, how to treat it, how to manage it, how to assess it, and really even how to surgically fix it going forward. But Andrews was one of those individuals who was very intuitive about understanding the athlete. He focused on making sure he understood, how that process worked, from seeing the triage when an athlete went down, working with the athletic trainers very closely, realizing that the athletic trainers are the most important part of the medical team of a sports team because they see the athletes every day. They're, watching them progress through injuries. They're watching the injuries occur. They're the first ones on the field. And so he really was one of the first ones to develop this keen relationship with them. And then, going forward, he was really also a pioneer in terms of how to manage these injuries. If they did need surgery, he was there helping, alongside Frank Job and, create his own sort of, version of the, Tommy John surgery and, helping kind of continue working on that with all the baseball players in the South. He obviously, everyone knows the story with him and, Bo Jackson and, working with him through that process. And then really through that, as his experience grew, he dedicated a ton of time to being present. He was on the sidelines on Thursdays and Fridays for high school games. He would be at multiple college games on Saturdays and then would spend his time up in, Washington, D.C. eventually taking care of the Redskins. And so his whole, sports career revolved around being on the field. And with that, he really, part of his personality, but also in that sort of experience, developed this amazing ability that few people have in being able to relate to athletes and really engender trust and confidence in the athlete as they go through the whole process. And so in doing so, he was able to really establish not only the standard for interactions with the medical staff and the athletes, but also the standards on how to do the surgeries and how to work through the rehab process. And because of that, and because of his ability to educate, he's educated, like as I mentioned before, over 500 fellows throughout that process. Who, when I showed up at Andrews for our fellowship, they put up a map of where all the team physicians are, and it is just innumerable across the country. And that is just a testament to his impact and his ability to really cultivate this idea of an understanding of how to really truly be a team physician and a sports medicine surgeon.
And the dude went till 80, so you're like halfway there.
Yes, I know. I was fortunate enough. I got to go to his retirement party in Birmingham last year, and it was incredibly special. He said some really touching words, and there were some people there that had, been operated on by him, and really you could tell how important he was to them and their career and their families, because he allowed them to continue their career, unimpeded, and he was a huge part of that. And so he has been such a huge role model for, obviously myself, but so many other surgeons who've been fortunate enough to go down this path as well. And so it was really a special moment to be part of, watching him go through that and get to be honored.
One more for me, and then we're going to take a break and get to segment 3 in the lightning round. John mentioned it earlier. So many of the guys that you run out to see if they're injured and what level of injury pop up and walk off on their own. And then there's that one player like Damar Hamlin who doesn't, and it's doomsday scenario. What are some of the things that you've had to do, Mike, to prepare yourself in the NFL now for a doomsday scenario? Because it's a violent sport and guys are going to get hurt. And Damar was unbelievably unlucky in terms of the impact at the right moment. But what do you got to know?
So number one, every year, the entire medical staff goes through training. And we have a highly specialized, especially at this level, experience where we go and really replicate several different scenarios that not only involve the obvious orthopedic injuries, head, neck injuries, cervical spine fractures, long bone fractures of the leg, but also any sort of cardiac, issue, any sort of abdominal issue, a spleen laceration, for example. So we really go through this every single year with the entire medical staff, and everyone really understands and establishes their role. And these sort of experiences really help solidify what we've learned throughout our careers to really understand, how to really assess an athlete, determine if this is life-threatening or not, determine if we need to elevate this and really, bring on the ambulance and get this player to a higher level of acute care, whether it be a hospital or somewhere else. And then this is part of the sort of 60-minute meeting that we do it before every single game. Everyone understands their roles. We have all the sort of representatives up there to execute what they need to, whether that's an airway individual, whether that's a code leader, whether that's someone holding cervical spine, the equipment sort of manager who is there to help, remove a helmet and to remove the pads and, knows everything about all that stuff. So everyone is really working towards the same goal, which is if something happens on the field that requires a very urgent assessment and triage and management that is life-saving, that everyone has their role and you step into that because you practiced it and because you discuss it and because it's our job, and we really rely on this ability to, fall back on our training. And the Buffalo Bills were just the best example you could witness during the Damar Hamlin experience. And they were honored for that at the last Physician Society meeting during the Combine. And, they'll tell you this is just our job, but at the end of the day, it is. But, when you have that experience to execute at the level he did, that's what we all hope for. We don't ever want to be in that position, but if you find yourself there, that's exactly how you want to operate. And, again, that's because they've done their training, they do it every year, and they rely on it. And they've shown that even afterwards, they've kind of expanded that experience to teach people in the community, hey, if you ever run across someone who looks like they're in trouble, these are the things you look for, and this is how to perform CPR, and this is, the steps that you can go down where you can save a life. And so for us, I'm an orthopedic surgeon, and I rarely run across that, if ever, in my actual day-to-day job. But we've seen that happen on the field, and this is why we practice this every year and go over it every meeting before the game.
Man, angels on the field, not just in the outfield.
Yeah.
All right, he's already worked 27 hours today. Let's take a break. We're going to wrap it up. Packers orthopedic surgeon Dr. Mike Ryan back in a second. The Inside Wisconsin Show.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Amplify Health, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Hey, remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button, just get with us. John, on this road trip to Washington, D.C., to say I miss my festival foods would be an understatement. So I'm a bit of a bourbon hunter. I like the bourbon. I look for bourbons when we're on things like this. And we stopped, I don't know, somewhere. And whenever we stop for gas, I type in liquor store. And up pops a bunch of liquor stores. So I go to this one that says Save on Beer, right? Okay. Walk into the Save on Beer store.
Do we know about where we were in the country?
Pennsylvania?
Okay, maybe? Sure. Let's go with that. Okay. Let's go with the Keystone State.
I walk into the Save on Beer spot thinking I'm going to walk into the wine and spirits section of Festival Foods. No. And I say, hey, do you guys sell liquor here? And the guy looked at me like I had four heads. So apparently, in certain parts of the country, you don't have a wine and spirits section at your Festival Foods. You have a beer or wine, or depending on what day, apparently dry.
So this is a long search, because at first I'm like, why are you stopping to buy groceries on a trip to DC that you miss your festival food? So you're talking about, in addition to whatever grade A meat products you can buy, like meat section or the dairy freezer, you use it as your liquor store as well.
100%.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So that a minute you threw me. By the way, Save on Beer doesn't sound like a place where you can probably get, a rump roast.
My point is, if there was a spot in Wisconsin that said its name was Save on Beer, let's just say the Festival Foods Wine and Spirits section.
Like you could get a wide assortment of fermented beverages.
Liquor. Yeah, all of it.
Yeah.
Really not.
Yeah. It's not the same everywhere. Listen, dude, 25 years in Connecticut, you could not buy beer on Sunday. You couldn't buy beer is all you could buy in a grocery store. And then literally to the point, like on Sundays, they had big curtains that they just pulled in front of it. So you couldn't even look at the beer on Sunday, right? It wasn't enough that you're like, okay, you can't buy beer on Sunday. Like, we're not even gonna let you look at it. We're taking the temptation away about that. Which is why it's good to be in Missouri, because you go into any convenience store, they have a beer cave. Boom, buy it all. You go into every grocery stores, they have different, names for them, obviously. You can go in and you can buy, like, not only every beer and liquor and wine, like some of it's locked away. Because, if you want the Johnny Walker Black, you got to ask the 18-year-old kid who's stocking Wheaties and Lucky Charms, hey, can you come over here real quick and open the liquor cabinet? So it's a whole different operation here. In fact, the first time, 100 years ago, first time Tamara ever came to Columbia, we were driving up and we stopped for gas in like Joplin. We were driving up from Tulsa. And I went in, and right behind the counter, right, is all the liquor and so the hard liquor. But I just thought, what'll be really funny is I'll buy a bottle of Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill. And we just cashed that on the drive up, feeling that was pretty safe. Because I think you can drink, that's like drinking 12 Miller Lights or whatever it is and still be fun. So, yeah, it's not everywhere. And I bet also on top of that, the Save on Beer didn't have gas rewards.
No, they do not.
Or eggs.
Thank you. I missed my festival foods, mainly the wine and spirit section, but
Understood.
All of it in general, and the gas rewards. Shop Festival Foods. They have literally everything you need 7 days a week. Believe it or not.
All of it.
All right, we're back to wrap it up. Dr. Mike Ryan, the Packers team orthopedic surgeon, Trevor and John. All right, 2 for me, then the ever-famous lightning round. Here's number 1. Do you have a nickname yet? It was Pepper, and it's Flea. I don't know if anybody you're replacing a guy they call Doc.
Yeah. I don't. I think I'm still new there, and so that may be coming down the line. I can only hope it's something as honorable as Doc one day.
I am coming off of a little family vacation / road trip to Washington, D.C. You were at Georgetown for med school. Shout out to Hamilton's. Hamilton's is the Packers Everywhere Packers bar in Washington, D.C. Had a blast watching the Vikings game with those guys. Awesome. Have you ever been to Hamilton's?
So I have not. The bar that we used to go to at Georgetown was not too far off campus, and so we would attend that. But in med school, we didn't have much time to do that. It was really focused on the studies.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, Trev. This is not what these people do. That's why. Never mind.
Okay.
All right. Are we rolling through some of these?
You got it.
All right. Here we go. Who'd you root for in Super Bowl 32? Packers and Broncos.
Oh, Broncos. That was back in the day.
All right, good. What's your marathon PR?
3:06:14.
Ooh, are you looking to crack 3, or are you good at 3:06?
I wanted to, and that was years ago, and I kind of got burned out on it, quite honestly. But so we'll leave it at that.
How did you enjoy Boston when you ran there?
So I actually never ran Boston.
You just qualified.
Yeah, I qualified, and I got injured while I was training for it, so I never got to run it, which is a bummer.
It's the hard thing, man. Train too much, you might not get there. Train too little, you can't finish. Who won the pole vault at the 1963 SEC Outdoor Championships?
I believe it was James Andrews.
Dr. James Andrews. He's listed in the official book as Jim Andrews from LSU, 14 feet. Charlie Weiss at Notre Dame, yes or no?
No.
No, very good. Birmingham, have you ever met Gucci Mane?
No, I've not met him.
It's too bad. What Brewers manager was born in Birmingham?
Ooh, that I don't know.
Trev?
Pat Murphy, right?
Alex Grammas. You guys are way behind. Preferred place to fish or eat fish in Green Bay?
Where was I just recently? I'm blanking. Preferred fish. I tried fishing the Fox River. Not very successful, but that's me.
That's not where you really probably want to go.
That doesn't work. I would say Union Hotel's got some good stuff.
Yeah.
Always good there. Yep. You're from Colorado Springs. Which is taller, Aaron's Hill or Pikes Peak?
Pikes Peak.
Yep, by a lot. True or false? You can eat rose hips.
False.
No, that's true. They're edible.
Are you kidding?
Yeah. Right. Average rehab time for an ACL.
Depends on the study, but if you look at return to play, around 9 months.
How about an Achilles?
If you ask Bob, it's probably, depending on what you want to do, probably at least 6 to 9 months.
Okay. You got to dumb this down for me, but what the hell did Bo Jackson do to his hip? The tackle looked innocent enough.
Yep. Yeah, if you look at it, he actually dislocates his hip. And when you watch him go to the ground, he rolls over and actually reduces, meaning puts the hip back in the socket. And so when he did that, the blood vessels that supply the ball of the ball and socket part of the joint got injured. So when that happens, you can develop what's called post-traumatic osteonecrosis, meaning the bone underneath the cartilage on the ball dies because the blood supply is compromised. And so that occurred. And when that happens, the cartilage gets worn down and it effectively dies as well. And you develop arthritis essentially.
So would he have been better off not having it if it had stayed out?
No, the theory, hard to say, quite honestly, because even if you would have recognized it, because we've had athletes here who will dislocate hips, and Tua is an example, and that was a concern, and that's why you go in and fix that. His was a little bit different because that sort of fracture was unstable and needed to be fixed. But with Bo, I think that they weren't sure exactly what happened because it was rare to see someone who had gotten tackled who dislocated their hip. It's a very hard thing to do. It requires a lot of force to do that. And so I think part of that was it just wasn't recognized early on. And so people always ask, could you have done anything? I don't know. The injury may have been bad enough that no matter what you did, even if you did surgery, that he would have, that would have led to that. That may have just been a sequela of the injury itself.
Like, is that case, so somebody who specializes and does hips, like have you watched that 100 times or anything?
I've watched a lot, yeah.
Yeah, to see what's going on. Okay, this is sort of an anatomy refresher. If the foot bone is connected to the heel bone and the heel bone is connected to the ankle bone, what is the ankle bone connected to?
The shin bone.
It's collected technically the leg bone. What's the leg bone connected to?
The leg bone is connected to the knee bone.
Correct, and the knee bone is connected to the.
The knee's not. The knee is a joint, but that's okay. Knee bone is connected to the thigh bone.
And the thigh bone is connected to the
hip bone.
Man, you know your stuff. One last thing. The Packers thing is a sexy title. Awesome. And I poke at Trevor. What's it like when you see the average guy, average gal that goes through something? It's traumatic. And after surgery and after whatever the month is, they walk away. They don't limp. They don't howl. They don't cry. What's the professional feeling when you get to that point with a patient?
It's why we do this job. It's the most satisfying experience of what I do every day. And whether that is a young high school kid who got to be back on the field for his senior year to kick a field goal, to the grandpa whose shoulder now works and he can lift up his grandkid without pain. That is why we do this job. And that is the single most rewarding part of what we do, is seeing people go back to the things they love without pain and with better function. There's nothing else that can be better than that.
I just did the math.
Yeah, there's an exclamation point, right?
Go ahead. Sorry, John.
I was just going to say that there's the exclamation point right there. That's awesome. I appreciate it. What a great time. What a great insight. I feel so much smarter. Not like I feel like I could stay at a Holiday Inn and perform hip surgery, but I still feel better about all of this.
Well, I'm glad. It's been my pleasure.
I was told there would be no math, but I just did some math, and I had 40,000 steps this week. And that doesn't happen if Mike Ryan doesn't respond to a text and get me to see Dr. Anderson. And I've had a team of people help the Achilles get to where it's at now, and it's still a long road for me. I had a little bit of a setback, Mike knows, but I'm grateful for what you do and who you are, man. Thanks for joining us on the show. And
Mike,
please keep them healthy on the Packers.
Mike, some of that is because Trevor does not always follow the physician's instructions. I don't know if he's told you that, but I have insight that he has not always followed what has been asked of him. Okay. So I'm not saying he got what he deserved. I'm just saying some of what the doctor had said and advised to do, he chose to ignore because apparently he was smarter than some of the people that have gone to med school and had residencies and internships.
Hi, Mike. Good to see you, buddy. We'll let you go.
We got him through it. And he's walking 40,000 steps.
Damn right.
There you go. So, by the way, now I'm going to ask this real quick. Do you record everything now in the room when you do the surgery?
I don't. We have pictures that we take just so that we can show patients. And then on certain surgeries, I'll record them a lot of times because I like to show the patients. I like to review them myself. It's a unique case. Or I oftentimes will present at different sort of meetings, and we can use that as an academic sort of tool.
Got it. Yeah. The guy I had Dupotrons, the guy who did my surgery, is like, "Do you want to see it?" I'm like, "No." I'll just mail it to you anyway, just in case. I'm like, "But I don't." And so he's like, "How about if I send it to your wife?" And I'm like, "Okay, but no, I don't. I don't want to see that anyway." God bless. Good luck to you, man. I'm glad you're here, and I hope the Broncos don't call, because I feel like that could be that would be a tough pull.
I don't know. This is a unique place. I'm very fortunate to be here. Very thankful, and again, really enjoyed it, and I've enjoyed getting to meet people like Trevor and yourself, and look forward to seeing what happens and being Green Bay for a long time.
Be well, and I hope you have no work on Sundays. I hope it's all confined to during the week, man. Thanks.
Same here. Appreciate it. Thank you guys very much.
We want you to do a whole lot more than just save money. We want your money to grow, just like your dreams. We want you to achieve financial well-being and the feelings that go along with that. Capital Credit Union, doing the right thing.
It was him. Either he responds to my text and I get this thing fixed. I mean, listen, it was him. It was Dr. Anderson. It was Dr. Ruda here in Green Bay. But it takes a village. It does take a village. But when you know the best, you go to the best. And I'm glad that the Packers have chosen the best. Clearly, he knows his stuff.
Clearly, he does. And clearly, he is, as well as often as he works with the highest class of athlete, the most fit, and the elite athlete. It's clearly a person like you that makes his job worthwhile.
That's what I heard. I heard him say it is the guys like me. When I walk 40,000 steps in 1 week, that it's
the guys who should probably make sure they stretch before they go out and play. Dude, you cannot go to the Flamingo and drink 4 cases of Miller Lite and tell me you're stretching. And then that's making a difference. Okay. Let's try to. We know the score here. We can't revise the history. So, and it's
like
still
you
not the
never
same.
needed an orthopedic surgeon.
I told you we just did 5 reasons I needed them. But by the way, if you notice, all of those involved something that was not, me trying to play rec softball at 40.
Okay. Did you not play softball? Like you didn't play any rec softball ever?
Oh my God, yeah. First I played with the first summer we came back from college. I played on a team called NATO, which stood for negatives and total zeros. So we played with NATO with a bunch of my buddies. Then I played on Mike's Crowbar. And then I used to play all the time. And when I played for the television, always the TV station had a team.
So how were you when you hung them up? And
then I played in the ESPN league, and it was co-ed. I hung them up. I was probably 35, maybe closer to 40. But I hung it up when we had a couple of people. It's slow pitch softball, and guys would take a walk. I was still in good shape. I was still playing center field because I could still get to anything. And guys would take a walk in slow pitch co-ed softball. So I'd be sitting out there yelling, "Do you write home to your mom that you just walked in softball? That's awesome." And then we had one guy, he shall remain nameless, and he used to literally hit it the other way, and one other girl was playing second base. You're just like, whoa, that's misogynistic. Get up and just hit it. And I'm just like, I've just worked till 3 a.m, and now I'm getting up for a 10 a.m. softball game to watch guys walk. I'm like, I'm out, And there was some, I don't know if you remember Jonathan Coachman. He was one of those guys that was let go. Coach, he made a guy named J.W. Stewart cry one time because he made a base running blunder. I'm like, you guys, it's rec softball at 10 a.m. What are you doing? He has them staying after for extra infield. I'm like, I cannot. That's what led me away, is I could not match the intensity of some of those playing rec softball.
But it wasn't your body, is what I hear you saying. So
no, I could have gone. And by the way, I played one summer, or I played 1 year in Phoenix, and at KPHO, and I played the whole season. I did not make an out.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
I could square it up. Didn't make an out.
That's insane.
Now, I only had about 2 or 3 at bats a game because then I had to go back and do the 10 o'clock show. But yeah, didn't make an out.
Oh, you did it completely sober the whole time.
Yeah, because I'd have to go back. Yeah, did it. But I had some others anyway.
Good. What's the John Wisconsin tale of this week? Did you say there's a couple times that you?
Well, I felt like, I guess I should have just gone with some of those softball experiences where I played well and didn't hurt myself. So I had one when I was playing for. I was still at the K2L, which was the first station I worked at in Tulsa, and this guy somehow they got in it was a smaller softball, smaller and harder one. It wasn't like. And the guy roped it, and I went and chased it down, and he went around the bases, and he insisted he had hit a home run. And I'm like, dude, I caught the ball. He's like, there's no way you caught it. It went over your head. I'm like, it's right here. He's like, you had to pick it up. I'm like, no, I caught it. And finally his teammates were like, no, dude, he caught the ball. But That's awesome. Took a while to take him out. So I've had injuries that were legit, like, wow, I hurt myself doing things that were, things that people should be doing, whether you're skiing, or some things that were genetic or high jumping. And then I had a couple that were didn't require orthopedic help, but what I really needed was someone who just was smarter than I am to overrule the ideas of what I had. And so I'll make it quick because I've gone too much into this, but because I was a high jumper, I used to kind of like to jump over things for fun. So like when I was in school, for $5, I would jump over a Volkswagen.
Wow.
Right? It was just there, yeah. So one night, and the problem is I could do most of this in good shape, and then when you have a few and you're kind of you're impaired to some degree in your decision making. So we were down there at the old University of Missouri, and I thought I was in good shape, and so I thought I'm going to take $5 off these guys again, and I cleared the Volkswagen, but I didn't really see the cyclone fence on the other side.
Oh,
would have been a great America's hit me and ricocheted me back over it. So that we ended up sort of bruised and battered a little bit over that one. We had to sit out of practice a day. Came back and explained to coach how that happened. And then when I was a parkie, remember a parkie? You were probably not a parkie. You know what a parkie is, right?
You're a parkie
Yeah, I was at John Muir. I was a Parky. And so at the end, you had the end of the year kind of whatever it is, celebration festival that was actually over at Joanne's, the games and rides and all those other things. And then everybody went out and we went to Bay Beach and whatever was setting up there and just got, bombed. And I thought I can jump over this cyclone fence again. Only this was a snow fence, but this was before they had the yellow stuff and they were the old cedar kind of plank. They had the cedar rolls in them. Yeah, and I got up over it, but I shorted the landing, and I had one of those things come all the way back, just ripped down my thigh.
Oh.
And that was really painful the next day because the adrenaline and the liquor, you didn't really even notice it until I woke up the next morning, and like the sheet is bloody in the back.
Oh.
Like you had to peel. It was not happy. So the move of this is, it's great if you can jump over stuff. You should take a real good look at your blood alcohol level before you try these things. I don't know if there's a kit somewhere we can do that, some sort of breathalyzer that would say, how about we don't jump over the Volkswagen today? How about we look at the snow fence and go, I bet I could jump over that tomorrow after the 7th Long Island tea or whatever I was drinking for $2, wears off. So that's just a precautionary tale. We've had the doc on. We've talked about things that were legit injuries, and then there are some that were just self-imposed that otherwise what is the guy in Hill Street Bruce? Just be careful out there, kids.
If I ever start to list off the self-imposed injuries that you don't know about, it's long.
Oddly enough, though, the thing that hurt worse in my entire life, you've had this happen, I have no doubt. If you're playing tackle the bum or playing tackle football with your buddies, if you fall on an acorn on your elbow or your hip, like there's nothing that hurts worse than an acorn. Have you ever, it's just like, golly, and you play in the fall and you're just like, yeah.
That random rock that somehow made it on the field.
Yeah, the number of times in the Carrick's backyard, they had 2 giant oak trees that we all went back like, that is just awful. And then you try to rake them up. There were so many, but just tough it out. So
love it.
Never hurt myself getting off a bar stool.
Okay, time to go. Our thanks to Dr. Mike Ryan, Packers team orthopedic surgeon. He's keeping them healthy and me healthy too. As you were, Wisconsin, Happy New Year. We're off to a good start. We will see you for episode 100 next time. Let's go.
There you go.
We'll see you soon. Remember to subscribe on YouTube, leave a review, smash the like button. Just get with us.
The Inside Wisconsin Show is brought to you by American Family Insurance, Blaine's Farm and Fleet, Capital Credit Union, Festival Foods, Quick Trip, Legit Pizza, Miller Lite, North Star Mohican Casino Resort, and the University of Wisconsin-Platteville.
Shut up and sit down.